From Lagos, the nation's commercial capital, this is the News at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Millicent Walker.
Good evening. Tonight, it's the end of the road for a soldier who killed his senior colleague in line of duty in Borno, Azunna Madabuchi, who is sentenced to death by firing squad by Army court-martial. Another round of strike looms in Nigeria's university system as non-teaching staff begins three-day protest to press home their demands. Nigerian Medical Association joins call for suspension of national identity number registration, says it's aiding spread of COVID-19 across the country. And US House of Representatives continues intense debate to impeach President Trump over Capitol attack. Plus, you see business, sports, and later, international news from our London studios. On business news tonight, oil prices hit highest level since February 2020 amid expectations of lower US crude stockpile.
And on sports news tonight, 36 players and club staff test positive during the latest rounds of testing for COVID-19 in the English Premier League.
And from Abuja, federal government sets aggressive revenue target of 7.9 trillion naira for the year 2021, 30% higher than the target for 2020.
Apart from fighting Boko Haram insurgents terrorizing the northeast and armed bandits in other parts of the country, the Nigerian military has other internal issues to contend with, part of which are acts of lawlessness in some cases and indiscipline among its rank and file. And nipping this in the bud, the army says it is its priority. One of such cases is the judgment delivered today by the Army court-martial involving soldiers accused of committing serious crimes, including murder. A trooper, Azunna Madabuchi, got a death sentence by firing squad for killing the adjutant of his unit.
It's not the way it's meant to go for a soldier to be found committing acts unbecoming an officer. But that's exactly what happened at the 7th Division Court-Martial, where Trooper Azunna Madabuchi is arraigned for opening fire on an adjutant of his unit, Abakaka Ngoji, killing him. His reason? Anger at being denied travel leave. Now, he pays the ultimate price.
The sentence of this General Court-Martial on you, 16 NA/75/1343, Trooper Azunna Madabuchi, for the offense of murder is to suffer death, as provided under Section 106 of the Armed Forces Act. On 26 October 20, on the low
6 other soldiers were convicted before the court-martial, including Sergeant Sani Ishaya, Bidemi Fabiyi, Abdul Rashid Adamu, and Bala Musa for manslaughter after torturing a civilian, Peter Akpogu, to death. Amongst those arraigned, a soldier given 3 years in prison for unprofessional conduct involving the use of his firearm at a wedding that led to the death of a 12-year-old boy. The boy's father thanks the military authorities.
To be honest, justice has been served because I never expected the army to pursue the rights of the poor. We thought there are no consequences for killing, but we thank God the judgment was good and it should be a lesson for others. The job of the army is not for anyone to go to residential areas and do that. Our hope is that this serves as a lesson to the younger ones.
While counsel to the defendants thanks the courts for fair judgment.
Somebody stole a property that belongs to Nigerian army, but they were not enlightened enough to know that they were supposed to hand over these suspects either to the military police in the army or to the civil police. But they went and took law into their hands and tortured the person. Unfortunately, the victim died.
Another dimension to life in the military. As the armed forces do their jobs, they also clean house in respect to discipline within the ranks.
Meanwhile, the fight against bandits continues, and the military says it is not slowing down after its latest attack on their hideouts in Faskari and Jabia local government areas of Katsina State, where at least 10 armed bandits and a soldier were killed and several others wounded. The attack was launched by troops of Operation Sahel Sanity on January the 10th. The acting director of Defense Media Operations, Brigadier General Bernard Onyuko, explains that the troops were supported by a helicopter gunship, an action which forced the bandits to withdraw into the forest. He adds that the wounded soldiers are in stable condition and currently responding to treatment in a military medical facility. From Katsina to Kaduna State, where at least 2 persons have been reported killed during an attack by bandits on Kazachi village in Kauru local government area of the state. The State Commissioner for Internal Security and Home Affairs, Mr. Samuel Arwan, explains that the victims were ambushed by gunmen between Bakin Kogi and Narido village as they made their way from Bakin Kogi market. He also disclosed that troops of Operation Safe Haven responded to a distress call and arrived at the location to find 2 persons dead, while 2 others sustained gunshot injuries. Moving on to other stories, the trouble in Nigeria's public university system is far from over, as non-teaching staff of the universities, comprising the Non-Academic Staff Union, NASU, and the Senior Staff Association of Universities, SANU, have commenced a nationwide protest ahead of a planned industrial action to press for the welfare of its members. The unions, who protested across university campuses in the country, asked the government to honor its agreement it entered with them in 2009. Here is how the protest went in the nation's capital, Abuja, and some states in the north.
It's day 1 of the planned 3-day national protest by the non-teaching staff of Nigerian universities. At the Uni Abuja campus, the national president of the Non-Academic Staff Union of Universities, NASU, leads the protest, as protesters chant solidarity songs, displaying placards with inscriptions accusing the federal government of reneging on their agreement.
As we speak today, there are some persons that have not been taking their monthly salary, not because of a problem of their own, not because they don't come to work, but because of the inefficiency of the IPs. As we talk today, there are some allowances that we were enjoying before enrollment into IPs. That has stopped, and there is no reasonable explanation from IPs. And up to this time, no government functionary has called us into any meeting.
In Benue and Bauchi State, protesters occupy their various campuses, decrying the non-implementation of the new minimum wage and the alleged inconsistencies in IPES.
On the 20th of November last year, government entered into a memorandum of understanding with us on these issues. And they asked the Accountant General to compute the minimum wage arrears and forward to Honorable Minister of Education and Honorable Minister of Finance for payment. Up to now, we have received nothing.
In fact, for the past 11 months, every month you have different salaries. So we discovered that even for you to correct one anomaly, you have to go to Abuja, which is counterproductive. So we are believing that that IPS of a thing is more corrupt than where we were.
There is victory for all.
The situation is not so different in Kwara and Kogi State, where protesters occupy the campuses in a peaceful protest.
We're also asking the federal government to pay our retirement benefits to those of our members who are retiring. We've called on the federal government about the poor funding of state universities, which is very detrimental to the students and Nigerian universities as a whole.
They are not answering us at all. They've promised us 30 billion in a year back. Where is the 30 billion? They are not even talking about it.
The ray of hope to resume school after ASUU suspended its 9-month-old strike is now being threatened by another agitation from the non-teaching staff of these universities.
Well, let's say a similar situation in other states in the southern part of the country where the university workers also staged protests making the same demands. They want government to ensure a balance in the disbursement of federal funds to their unions and the Academic Staff Union of Universities. The clanging of a bell usually announces commencement. However, at the University of Lagos, the call is not for students to come to class, but the shutting down of the system.
Solidarity forever, for the union makes us strong.
Members of the Senior Staff Association of Nigerian Universities and Non-Academic Staff Union of Educational and Associated Institutions are not happy with the federal government, with what they describe as countless breaches by government on agreement reached over their welfare.
Here we are in University of Lagos to carry out the directives, of our national headquarters against unfair treatment, against insensitivity of the federal government, against injustice.
Our welfare matters. It is not when we die that we enjoy the rights. Human rights is our property. No one can dash us our rights.
In Imo State, their counterparts seek divine favor for a successful protest. With prayer concluded, the march to press home their demands begins.
Our message is very, very clear to the federal government. If you go into the agreement, you must keep to it. They have gone into agreement with us, even as at 2020 October. This is more than 3 months. They have refused to do anything.
Edo State teachers, though not on a federal cadre, are also aggrieved, accusing the state government of neglect. The union is also agitating to down tools. It's only the first month of 2021 and already there are signals it may be another long year of disruptions in an education sector begging for stability. In part two, after the break, ASUU raises concerns over reopening of schools due to COVID-19 and will be joined by an epidemiologist from Bayero University, Kano, Professor Isa Sadiq Abubakar. Plus, we have an update on the national identity registration process. Please join us again. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the News at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. It's the end of the road for soldier who killed his senior colleague in line of duty in Borno, Azunna Madabuchi, who is sentenced to death by Army court-martial. Another round of strike looms in Nigeria's university system as non-teaching staff begins 3-day protest to press home their demands. Nigerian Medical Association joins call for suspension of national identity number registration, says it's aiding spread of COVID-19 across the country. And U.S. House of Representatives continues intense debate to impeach President Trump over Capitol attack. The Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, has commended efforts by a team of Nigerian professors and scientists investigating the effectiveness and roles that ivermectin drug can play in the treatment of the coronavirus disease. The team, comprising Nigerian scholars home and abroad who gave him an update on their research work, has submitted their findings on the usefulness of the drug to the World Health Organization. The team led by Mr. Femi Babalola, the principal investigator, and Chris Bode, the chief medical director of the Lagos University Teaching Hospital, also commended government for encouraging their research into the COVID-19 treatment. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, on his part, said he is excited to know that the drug has been used in the treatment of river blindness in the country. He adds that the federal government will continue to explore further ways to support medical research for the benefit of Nigerians. Meanwhile, Ekiti State government has inaugurated a 187 solar direct drive cold chain equipment which will help in the storage of COVID-19 vaccines. The state governor, Mr. Kayode Fayemi, believes that the facilities delivered ahead of the arrival of COVID-19 vaccines will enhance immunization activities towards curbing preventable deaths and improve neonatal, infant and maternal health indices.
Thank you very much.
The total number of refrigerators expected is 231, while 187 have been received. We're awaiting 44 to complete the order. This is a bid to boost cold chain system management and facilitate uninterrupted availability and distribution of vaccines in their optimal storage temperature and quality that will enhance our immunization activities towards curbing preventable deaths and attainment of health for all. The ideal of immunization is to ensure that no child less than 5 years or pregnant women is left out of vaccination processes in our efforts to improve the neonatal, infant and maternal health indices in our state.
Now, students and parents may have heaved a sigh of relief when the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, suspended its prolonged strike in December 2020. But there are bigger concerns with the climbing numbers of COVID-19 cases and the federal government reviewing the January 18th date for resumption of schools. Our next report highlights concerns and debates in the academic community on what it will take for university students to return to the classrooms after months of suspended academic activities.
University students have been out of school for 9 months. This prolonged closure has been in response to COVID-19, coupled with the strike by the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU. Now that the strike is off, the second wave of COVID-19 is presenting another unprecedented challenge, and for students to return to school without creating panic, there are a set of protocols that must be set in place. Hand washing facilities, body temperature checks at all points of entry to schools' major facilities. Going by this checklist, the Academic Staff Union of Universities is not convinced that schools are ready for reopening.
The government rolled out some guidelines in July 2020. And when you study that guideline or the guideline document, you find that they have even prescribed there what should be done before educational institutions are reopened. For instance, they have checklists for compliance with COVID-19 protocols, non-pharmaceutical aspects. And we have not seen that assessment being done.
From the national to the state chapters, the union has been speaking in one voice.
It's not that we are not willing to resume, but as a responsible union, you cannot open your eyes and willingly expose, your colleagues, your members, to visible danger. As you entered the University of Lagos, for example, I doubt whether at the gate you saw any equipment or anything that suggests that, when students are coming in, they can be sure that minimum safety requirements against the COVID pandemic has been put in place.
To minimize the risk of transmission, Ahmadu Bello University is planning a staggered return of students, starting with the graduating classes later in January.
Because of our population, we are not calling back all the students. It's a phased reopening, and we are calling back the final year student, that is the graduating student, and then 100 level, 200 level students. And we are doing this because these are the level where you have carryovers and so on.
And the students are also looking forward to returning to classes.
I'm happy because I spent almost a section at home and it has been so boring, and if not for skill acquisitions that we have been able to do as students.
A remote or virtual learning system has also been tabled as an option as public higher institutions contemplate on returning to school in the wake of the second wave of COVID-19.
And joining us live from our Kano studios to examine this issue further is the Director, Center for Infectious Diseases Research, Bayero University, Kano, Professor Isa Sadiq Abubakar. Thank you for joining us on the News at 10. I'd like to begin by asking, as an expert in this subject and being a member of the academia, what facts do you have regarding preparations for the resumption of school? And this is in the face of the second wave of COVID-19.
Okay. As an academician as well as a public health physician, I am really concerned about the two things that are before me. Number one, the academic activities, which have been not going in this country for so long, but at the same time, we are facing the second wave of COVID-19, which is a reality. If this resumption were to take place around July last year, one would have said that, okay, we have started noticing a decline in the number of daily cases reported by the NCDC. However, if you look at what is happening across the world now, and in Nigeria specifically, the number of cases being reported, which hitherto was even less than 100, has now climbed to over 1,500 in most of the days. This is saying that the number of cases is rising, and it's like the second wave has taken shape very well in Nigeria. One thing I want us to understand is the fact that the number of daily cases reported is not truly representative of the situation in Nigeria. This is my personal opinion, because most states are having difficulties with the number of tests they conduct on a daily basis. And in fact, that is why the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 is taking measures to assist the states ramp up their tests. And unless we are able to reach a minimum level of about at least 5% of Nigerians being tested, I do not feel we are at that level where we can confidently say that we are there as far as control is concerned. So now if we allow a lot of activities such as commercial activities, social activities, and academic activities to take place, there is likelihood of people mixing very well. And if you look at a university, it's like the whole country coming together, because people will be coming from different states and they will come to a place where they will learn. Some of them will be sleeping there. And if you look at the most important problem we are going to be facing is lack of physical distancing. A room that is meant for like 4 students is currently being occupied by up to 12 students because of the issue of squatting and the rest. So physical distancing is not going to be there. And then in the classes, you know that most of our lecture theaters are overpopulated. So it is going to be a source of concern for all the universities to achieve this much desired physical distancing. And that is going to be the greatest challenge. The other issues having to do with hand washing, hand sanitizing, use of face masks, at least they are under the control of the university authorities to enforce them. But the university authority itself cannot guarantee that physical distancing, which is supposed to be its main role in this case. Now,
Professor Sadiq Abubakar.
And if you look at
Yes.
I must quickly ask you, because we've run out of time, but if you can answer me in just a sentence, and this is, do you think that it would be logical to open other, perhaps sectors, the markets and every other places, and then shut down schools?
Well, you see, even the other sectors, including commercial sectors, we have to review what is happening and most likely stagger some of the activities. It is not only education sector that we should halt in this country, but other sectors need to be reviewed also with the aim of reducing population mixing and further transmission of this virus. Definitely we have to take everything, a holistic approach, not only the education sector, but at least the education sector should also be given a good look at, because if we allow everything to take place in the academia and the youths that are not well affected by serious cases will continue to mix, but the people that will be at the receiving end will be the elderly. Most of the lecturers will be suffering the illnesses, and then some of the other people who do their activities within the university campuses will also suffer. And
essentially, the
youth,
risks are there.
You
mentioned them. The risks are there, looking at a holistic approach at everything. We'd like to appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Professor Issa Sadiq Abubakar. Thank you for joining us on the News at 10 tonight.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Now, the Nigerian Medical Association wants the federal government to suspend the ongoing national identity number registration, considering the large crowd at the various registration centres. The president of the association, Professor Innocent Uja, explains that the current process contravenes the COVID-19 protocols, especially with the second wave of the virus. He also called for the establishment of oxygen plants across the country to address the challenges faced by patients. He made the comments at a news conference in Jos, the Plateau State capital.
We predicted that the second wave will come and we should be ready. Now the simple non-pharmaceutical components of the response by Nigerians, where we should take ownership, has completely failed. People are not using face masks. People are not using hand sanitizers. And the issue of social distancing has completely collapsed. Okay, why should we be talking about national identity card now, where people are clinging and climbing over one another? What is urgent in getting national identity card? I did my own I filled my form in 2015. Up to today, I don't have an identity card, national identity card. So what is the urgency? And I believe the Nigerian Medical Association believe very strongly that there is no urgency for the national identity number that they are asking for. It can be suspended until we are able to appropriately respond to the COVID pandemic.
When the News at 10 returns, federal government sets aggressive revenue targets of 7.9 trillion naira for the year 2021, 30% higher than the target for 2020. Please join us again. A day after workers of the National Identity Management Commission called off their strike, a crowd of enrollees have returned to the NIM headquarters at the nation's capital, struggling to get registered. Some of them lament the slow process of the registration, while others say the challenge of registration lie with the prospective enrollees.
A large crowd of Nigerians defy COVID-19 safety protocols at the headquarters of the National Identity Management Commission as they rush to beat the deadline for the registration of their identification numbers. The scene can best be described as survival of the fittest. Some who cannot stand the struggle watch from the sides. This prospective enrollee vents his frustration at the process.
This card today to be here this morning, on 12 January, I've been here. Up to this moment, so many people are here, they don't even have access to enter into the premises. People are here, as I'm talking to you now, I'm about going back to my house because I have to leave my office, abandon my work schedule to be here to be captured, only for them to be selecting people they know. It's very, very unfortunate in this country.
At what time have you been here? Since what time?
I've been here since 6 a.m. They asked me to come here on 12th January. You can see this slip. It's written 12th January.
When did you collect this paper?
I collected this slip on 22nd December last year.
This lady, however, has a different view.
The staff here, they are trying their best. Look at all the police officers. They are maintaining their self. Do you understand? Not to like be hooligans with us. Yet, the crowd, the people, they refuse to adhere to the orders of the staff. Okay, form a simple line. You will be entering according to the line. Nobody wants to do that.
We'll go inside though.
Finally, the gate is opened for all.
Yes, and the gate.
The scene in here is calm. Many are optimistic that the federal government would meet the demands of the workers to avoid a setback in the registration exercise.
And we have more stories from the nation's capital. Here's Gloria Mozoke standing by. Hello, Gloria.
Hello, Millicent. The federal government has set an aggressive revenue target of 7.9 trillion naira for the year 2021. It expects 30% of the total revenue from the oil sector and 70% from the non-oil sectors. The Minister of Finance, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, who gave the projection at a virtual budget breakdown, explains that the 7.99 trillion naira revenue target is 30% higher than the amount estimated for the 2020 budget.
It's been barely 2 weeks after President Muhammadu Buhari assented to the 2021 budget of 13 trillion naira, and since then, the topic has been generating debate on how to execute the budget, seeing the global and domestic impact of COVID-19 on the economy.
Project screen for you.
To help Nigerians understand how the budget will run and be funded, the Minister of Finance, Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, speaks to Nigerians, but this time through a virtual meeting. First, she explains how the 2020 budget fared.
At the end of 2020, we had spent 1.80 trillion as released, beg your pardon, for capital expenditure, and this is about 89% of the provisions for capital. I'm saying released because in December we took stock. We found that there was still substantial amount of the monies that were released sitting in MDAs that were not utilized. So we approached the National Assembly and they agreed to extend the capital component of the budget for 2021 to be performed up to 31st of March 2021.
She then speaks on the 2021 budget, which will be driven by an aggressive tax regime, while the budget deficit of over 5 trillion naira is expected to be funded through domestic and foreign resources, pegged at 2.3 trillion naira respectively.
We have projected an aggregate revenue available for the 2021 budget to be 7.99 trillion naira. This is 36.9% higher than the 2020 projection of 5.84 trillion. This increased revenue is designed because we have plans to promote fiscal transparency, accountability, and comprehensiveness. And also we have brought in the budget of 60 government-owned enterprises and integrated them into the 2021 national budget.
Nigeria is still grappling with the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic on its economy, just as other nations, and the likely alternative for the government is revenue collection. The federal government says it will be leveraging on technology, independent revenue monitoring, and plugging of leakages to boost its revenue collections.
Well, Governor Nyesom Wike of Rivers State has reaffirmed his determination to remain a member of the People's Democratic Party, which he says the future of Nigeria depends on. Governor Wike restated this during the commissioning of a road project in Rivers State by the former president of the Senate and Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Senator Ayim Pius Ayim. The governor also restated his commitment to the development of the state, promising that none of his projects will be left uncompleted for his successors.
If there is one thing the Wike administration can be easily identified with, it certainly must be the provision of road infrastructure in Rivers State. Day after day, Governor Nyesom Wike traverses the state with special guests across party lines to commission projects, especially roads. His latest guest for the commissioning of the Urumu-Ikini-Alu Road in Obiakpo and Ikwere local government areas is the former Senate President Anyim Pius Anyim. Expressing satisfaction with Governor Wike's performance, Senator Anyim says only the PDP can deliver the Wike kind of infrastructure to Nigerians.
Governor Wike is bonded with his people. As a result, he knows their needs and he conceives his projects to meet their needs. For this reason, there is none and there cannot be white elephant project in Rivers State.
Excellency, yes, sir, President Wike.
Governor Wike, who is elated by his achievement, challenges the APC to show their projects in Rivers State as he urges the party to be ready to hand over to the PDP at the national level in 2023.
Ozoba, Rumapaya, the Choba. That is true. We have done Ozoba to Ruosi. We have done Alakaya. We have done Rubekini now. You see that? I have told Minister of Works, because of what the local contractor has done, they must give him another job from Alo to Omagwa. It is my singular honor to commission this Urumu-Ikini-Alu Road.
There may be a reason for the residents of this community if the governor fulfills his promise to reconstruct the road connecting the area to Omagwa, where the Port Harcourt International Airport is located.
Well, staying in Rivers State, some youths of Ibikalama Okochiri communities in Okrika local government area are asking the federal government to inaugurate a substantive board for the Niger Delta Development Commission. During a project to commission the premises, the youths accused the Niger Delta Development Commission leadership of divide and rule. The protesters blocked the main entrance of the NDDC, but it took the intervention of the commission's sole administrator to calm them down.
So I would advise the leaders. Now you don't know my house. The appointment of the SA on youth affairs should be given to somebody that will be of beneficiary to the youth, and not someone that will just come in and begin to embezzle, will not pick calls, will not take text messages, you keep maybe moving around, no calls will get to you. We don't want that. So we want a vibrant youth, someone that has something upstairs that will carry the youths along.
It's good that you have brought this to us. There was no protest carried out here yesterday. We appointed an SA youth. It's by my, it's near me here, Eradire. Some youths of the community said, we don't want him, it should have been this. We said no. In appointing persons, we look at the pedigree, we look at the performance, we look at his background. Being a SA youth does not necessarily mean those who have big shoulders, those who can shoot gun. No, we needed somebody in the level of Eradire. This has been a commissioner for youth in Bayelsa State for 8 years. He has been the chairman, president of IYC for 3 years. He has consulted with the Amnesty International. He has so he's bringing in wealth of experience.
Well, that's it from the nation's capital. It's back to you, Millicent.
Thanks, Gloria. Now let's bring you some business news. Here's Teniola Shibuwale.
Well, Millicent, I'm delighted to say it's more good news for Nigeria's crude oil export as the price of the commodity has risen nearly $57 today. This comes as concerns over tighter supply and forecasts of a drop in U.S. inventories countered the fears over rising cases of COVID-19 across the globe. International oil price benchmark Brent crude was up 1.60% at $56.55 a barrel at 9:45 p.m. local time. And that's after reaching $56.75 in earlier sessions, its highest level since February 2020, while its contemporary, the US WTI, climbed by 1.76% to 53.17 cents per barrel. Meanwhile, the latest US crude supply data due later tonight are expected to show inventories from the world's biggest oil consumer fell by 2.7 million barrels for a fifth straight week. A total of 1.8 trillion naira has been spent for the execution of capital projects in the 2020 fiscal period. At a virtual meeting, some top government officials, the Minister of Finance, Zainab Ahmed, explains that the figure represents about 89% of the provision made for capital projects for the year. She further explains that out of the 1.8 trillion naira spent on capital projects, the sum of 118 billion naira was released for COVID-19 related capital expenditure. The minister mentions that despite the projection of 9.9 trillion naira expenditure for 2020, the federal government spent about 10.08 trillion naira, which represents 101% performance. Well, the World Bank has announced plans to invest over $5 billion within the next 5 years to improve agriculture productivity and help restore degraded landscapes across 11 African countries. The World Bank President, David Malpass, made this known at a high-level meeting with France and the United Nations, which focused on addressing climate change and biodiversity loss. Last month, the International Financial Institution announced ambitious new target for 35% of its financing to have climate co-benefits on average over the next 5 years. The World Bank Group is the biggest multilateral funder of climate investments in developing countries. Well, let's check in on the stock markets. The NSE's total value crossed back to the 21 trillion naira level at the close of today's trading session after investors maintained their bargain hunting for some high value and mid-cap stocks. Well, let's join Layo Adegoke for a summary of today's activities.
Thanks a lot, Teniola, and welcome to the Stock Market Report. Despite a mixture of speculation and profit-taking, the stock market ended today's trading session higher by 0.36%, all thanks to the 5 naira gain on Dangote Cement's share price. Last week, the industrial giant lost about 8% of its value following the outcome of its share buyback. But today, some investors took advantage of the price drop to buy more of its shares, and that countered the impact of sell pressure from other high-value equities like GT Bank, MTN Nigeria, UBA, as well as Oando. However, looking at the activity chart, we see the volume of shares traded today was more than 1.16 billion units, and a majority of this turnover was driven largely by investors' interests for the shares of UPDC Real Estate Investment Trust. At the same time, the gains from 26 other equities led by the trio of Niger Insurance, AXA Mansard and Transcorp added some support to the 75 billion naira added to the market's value. Today's performance at the market shows that the bull is making a strong comeback, and traders say they are quite optimistic that the uptrend will continue into the rest of the week, as a set of new investors are expected to come into the market. For now, we still keep our fingers crossed for that outcome. And that's the Stock Market Report. I'm Layo Adegoke.
a lot, Lyle. Meanwhile, U.S. stock markets managed to close today's trading session in the green, and this is coming after traders weighed higher rates, possible stimulus, and ongoing political turmoil in the country. Well, here are some snapshots of global markets closing figures for the day. And that's Business News Tonight. It's back to you, Millicent.
Thanks, Teniola. The Inspector General of Police, Mohammed Adamu, has ordered the immediate redeployment of 21 commissioners of police to new commands and formations. This is according to a statement today by the Deputy Force Public Relations Officer, CSP Aremu Adiniro. Some of the officers affected include CP Adeleke Bode, who was posted to Kebbi State, Philip Maku, Special Protection Unit, Forces Headquarters, Abuja, Ali Aji, Sokoto, Ohekire Idris, Armament Federal Headquarters, Abuja, Daniel Sokari Pedro, Commandant, Police College, Ikeja, and John Amadi, Port Authority, Western Lagos. South Africa has secured 20 million doses of the COVID-19 vaccine as it sets out to begin the rollout of its vaccination program, beginning with health workers this month. This was part of the announcements made last night as President Cyril Ramaphosa addressed the country amid rising COVID-19 cases and related deaths. Our South Africa Bureau Chief Betty Dibia joins us now for more on the latest there in South Africa. Hello, Betty. How effective have the measures been to check the spread of COVID-19, which seems to defy the preventive measures in place, especially due to the second wave?
Thank you so much, Millicent. Well, the success or not has largely been colored by the level of cooperation of the citizens, as well as the new variant that everyone is talking about now, the 501Y V2, the new variant of the COVID-19 virus. So the government has put in place a lot of measures. I know that with the ban in sale of alcohol, for example, and the closure of the border, the 20 land borders in the country, that has put paid to the likely importation of the virus, maybe by people coming through the borders. For now, people are still doing things, not really adhering to the health safety regulations, like funerals, as the president mentioned last night, and that's putting the spanner in the works of any measure of success that the government is trying to achieve. But they're going ahead with efforts. Luckily, the numbers in the past few days, we've seen 21,000 cases in one day for 3 days back to back. Luckily, now it's going down from 17,015. Today, the number of newly confirmed cases is 13,105. The death toll is getting higher, which is worrying government.
All right, thank you so much, and do stay safe.
Thank you.
Now to more international news. Here's Simon Pusey with Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. The FBI has warned that armed protests could take place in Washington, D.C. and in all 50 state capital cities in the run-up to Joe Biden's inauguration on January the 20th. US officials have said that Trump supporters are expected to storm the Capitol again on Inauguration Day in an event branded online as a Million Militia March. The Pentagon, FBI and Secret Service have all been placed on alert, and the National Guard said it would increase troops in Washington to at least 10,000 by Saturday. Meanwhile, House Democrats have introduced an article of impeachment against President Trump for incitement of insurrection. House leaders have scheduled a Wednesday vote to charge Mr. Trump for his role in inciting the riot at the Capitol that left 5 people dead last week. The vote will be held unless Vice President Mike Pence invokes constitutional powers of the 25th Amendment to remove Mr. Trump from office. However, there is no sign that Mr. Pence is prepared to do so. If convicted, Mr. Trump will be the first president ever to be impeached twice. Ugandan opposition president candidate Bobi Wine says soldiers have raided his home and have arrested his security guards.
2 of my gardeners were taken away.
Wine has also said at a news conference that one of his drivers had been shot by the military on Monday night and died in the morning. Ugandans are set to vote on Thursday in the presidential elections, which will see Mr. Wine face longtime leader Yoweri Museveni, a former guerrilla leader who seized power in 1986. The former president and vice president of the Tigray region have been among the captured TPLF members who have landed in Ethiopia's capital Addis Ababa. Footage shows former President Abe Weldu and former Vice President Abraham Tekeste wearing handcuffs and being escorted by armed guards from the airplane. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's government declared victory in its conflict with the Tigray People's Liberation Front on November the 28th. It is believed that the conflict has killed thousands of people. India's Supreme Court has halted the implementation of new farm laws that have been fiercely opposed by farmers and that have sparked huge protests outside the capital. The top court has said it will form a committee to hear farmers' grievances against the laws. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has said that he wants to nearly double India's economy by 2024, and the legislation aims to modernise an antiquated agricultural system. Farm leaders have said that the laws will enable a few corporations to control the country's vast agricultural sector and fear the overhaul will lead to lower crop prices and pave the way for corporate takeovers of their small farms. The black boxes from the Indonesian passenger jet that crashed into the ocean with 62 people on board have been retrieved. Authorities hope that the black boxes can provide vital information about the possible cause of the crash. The 26-year-old plane lost more than 10,000 feet of altitude in less than a minute. The Boeing 737, which had been grounded for 9 months last year, passed an airworthiness inspection last month. The black boxes will now be handed over to Indonesia's National Transportation Safety Committee. People in central Spain are struggling as a deep freeze follows the weekend's heavy snow, leading to treacherous conditions. Officials have warned the elderly to stay at home. At least 7 people have died due to the weather. The temperature plunged to minus 25 degrees Celsius in Molina de Aragon and Teruel in mountains east of Madrid, which was Spain's coldest night for at least 20 years. And finally, a South Korean startup company has developed a collar that can detect 5 emotions in dogs by monitoring their barks using voice recognition technology. The collar can tell owners if their dog is feeling happy, relaxed, anxious, angry, or sad. The company has developed an algorithm based on a database of more than 10,000 samples from 50 breeds of dogs.
Instantly realize that how their dog feels.
The PetPools collar can tell pet owners through a smartphone application how their dog is feeling and help them communicate better and more accurately. And that's your international news around the world in 5. And now back to the Channel Studios in Lagos.
Many thanks, Simon. The Golden Eaglets of Nigeria have qualified for the semi-finals of the West African Football Union Tournament after Côte d'Ivoire defeated Ghana 3-1 in the final Group B game today. The result means the Golden Eaglets finished in second place behind group leaders Côte d'Ivoire, and they will face Burkina Faso for a place in the final. Neymar has returned to training with PSG ahead of their Champions Trophy clash against Marseille. Brazilian Neymar was stretchered off the field with an ankle injury following a heavy challenge from Thiago Mendes in PSG's home league-earned defeat to Lyon last month. And that's a wrap on sports news. Back to you, Melissa.
Thanks, Ayo, today. And the main news again. The Nigerian Army court-martial today sentenced a trooper, Azunna Madabuchi, to death by firing squad after he was found guilty of killing a superior officer, Lieutenant Babakaka Ngoji, in the line of duty in Borno State. That's news at 10 tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Millicent Nwonka. Have a good night.